I was an orphan, living in the back alleys of Enbar, until one day I was overheard singing. That was when my new life began.
Oof, rags to riches story. Those are interesting. Dorothea, she's been through so much, and she's so misunderstood. I hope she finds that true love.
Ah, such confidence. Don't be flippant. If you incur our wrath, you will see just what I mean.
Yeah, so he's kind of scary. But it's also really cool that not all the characters in Fire Emblem are just going to be pushovers that you can easily sway to your side right from the start. I'm interested to see how this evolves.
Whatever it is, I didn't do it, I swear. Unless I'm offending you just by standing here.
Wow. Now that is heartbreaking. I know how tough it can be to be socially awkward. I'm definitely cheering for Bernadetta. This game! This game is just incredible, especially the characters. They're all so unique and well thought out. And there's no stereotypical cliched anime boy that's always whining and freaking out. Games have finally matured to the point where characters are no longer... What?
I'm not finished with you!
Oh, stop! Oh my god, no!
I am Caspar!
Oh, that voice! That terrible, terrible voice! Good to see ya! Welcome to the weekend. It's Shep here from Gaming Introspection, ready to make Fire Emblem fans roll their eyes at how little I know about this series. Despite being a veteran gamer, I really had no idea about Fire Emblem until I played Three Houses. To me, Fire Emblem was just an obscure franchise from Japan that seemed to be taking over Smash Brothers with each successive entry. Recruits from different locations and regions adding themselves to the fighter ranks, almost like an invading army force that... Well, actually, that is kind of the main idea, right? Different factions strategically move across different continents, such as Fodlan, as is emphasized in Three Houses, hoping to achieve various goals such as the unification of the continent or the overthrow of the Church of Seiros. I apologize in advance for my ignorance, as Three Houses is the first and only main entry I've played. But thankfully, I believe I've started at one of the best places possible, because the infrastructure within the general game flow, at least while you're at the monastery, almost resembles that of other traditional role-playing games, like the Persona series, as much as it does the traditional tactical warfare that continues to build through each successive entry. Your role in the story is one that can interact with the dozens of main students and staff of Garrett Mach. Your encounters with them vary during any one playthrough, because only a third of them are going to become initially your trusted companions that stick with you through the story, while the other two factions diverge into their own destinies once you reach the crucial mid-plot climax. What I'd like to do today is to step back completely from the warring aspect and instead zoom in on each of the characters and appreciate what an admirable job the game does at making us care for them, appreciating how unique each of them are. After all, as any die-hard Fire Emblem fan knows, wrong moves on the battlefield literally remove these characters from the story completely. These aren't just units that you just place in harm's way without a second thought. They have dreams, insecurities, fears, family drama, and their own ambitions that sometimes are clashing with the bigger outlook that life constantly throws towards them. This is the game's best strength, and it begs to be explored in detail. Let's look at how potentially devastating of a prospect that one wrong battlefield move becomes as we embrace each character's journey from Fire Emblem Three Houses. Oh, by the way, tell me in the comments, which of the three is your favorite house? And please know beforehand, I'm not talking about the three leaders here, because yes, everyone loves Claude. I get it. He's witty, he's charming, he can do sick tricks with arrows and is skilled at riding dragons. He's a damn dreamboat. And as far as Edelgard and Dimitri go, they both have their roles and fates so clearly described that I'm leaving them on the bench for this. I mean, of the supporting cast, which of the three really found a place in your heart and made it the most enjoyable playthrough? Now, to keep this organized, and to help you focus on the house that contains most of your favorite characters, we'll be breaking this introspection down into 3 separate videos. I'll be taking a look at all the recruits of the Black Eagles first this week. During the next episode, we'll follow up with the Blue Lions ranks, and then end with the members of the Golden Deer. As for the Church of Cerros characters, I'll be dividing them up across the 3 episodes. But don't worry about waiting too long. You'll find crossovers from characters among all 3 houses in each video, which kinda just proves my point about how interconnected and deep the developers made this game. Let's begin with Edelgard's house, the Black Eagles.
I watched you training earlier. Pitiful display.
What a starting point. This guy would seem like he could double for Severus Snape from Harry Potter, maybe? An evil and disenchanted personality who can very well turn out good in the end. Or you might see his demeanor and appearance as more suited to an all-out villain, which can also happen depending on the personal decisions your character makes. When one of the first things he says to you is,
If you pose a threat, I shall have to dispose of you.
it's hard not to consider him as someone who will be your undoing. Hubert is very tough to get through to. His loyalty to Edelgard is nothing short of remarkable, and if you are steadfast in your support of him, he is overwhelmed by it and lets you know that it really is appreciated.
Words cannot properly express my gratitude, Professor.
This commitment to those who share his beliefs is true no matter how the story flows, and imbues him with, at the very least, a begrudging respect, no matter how you feel about him otherwise.
You make it sound easy. I find myself trusting you, even with my life.
And that's a huge thing with Hubert. It takes tremendous effort to build up rapport with him. But even blowhards like Ferdinand, given enough time, will manage to impress him with simple things like positive vibes. Although, when it happens, other characters find it hard to believe because it's such a rarity.
Matched.
Hubert, are you alright? Do you have a cold? Or the plague? Am I hearing a deathbed confession?
He'll also admit to mistakes, even to lazier members of the group, even though he'll try to back out of the sincerity of it all, complete with backhanded compliments. Furthermore, despite his emotionless observations, such as viewing Petra as a measuring stick against Edelgard, if he gets to know the Brigid princess better, he realizes that ignoring her humanity and want for cooperation was the wrong thing to do. He initially seems to be a man you love to hate, but there's so many unexpected bends to his personality that make him endearing. It's a special moment when, if you manage to stay with him to the end, he puts you on the same pedestal as Edelgard, which is truly a feat to behold.
But if I had 2 lives to give, I might devote one of them to you.
I hate you.
Huh, I was right. Might I ask why you find me so despicable? I can scarcely guess.
3 Houses introduces this blowhard as the poster boy for preppy, egotistical rich snobbery. There's so much boisterous, shameless bragging and fake smiles that seem to solely define him, and it makes a player think twice about building any chemistry between he and his squad mates, for fear that he'll turn your whole army into a hair-combing, hot air-spewing club of narcissists. This is especially evident in his conversation with Lawrence, who is the moniker for the elitist role in the Golden Deer House. Just listen to how one simple subject, tea, becomes the seed for which all of their braggart tendencies get to grow.
What a delightful aroma. When I close my eyes, I feel as though I've wandered into a rose garden. Such a precise, poetic description. But please, drink up. No need to stand on ceremony.
Flavor, fragrance, and hue, all in fine harmony. This is a most superior brew. You did well to acquire such fine fare.
You are clearly quite passionate about tea. And more than just passionate. You know what it takes to brew a fine cup. To say nothing of your flawless etiquette and sterling attentiveness.
Sir, the ability of a person of fine stock to exhibit a rich quality of character is precisely what determines whether one is worthy to be called noble. And all of that can be seen in how one handles such a simple thing as a cup of tea.
Ah, marvelously put, Lawrence. I can tell you have given much thought to this subject. And if I may, I have always considered you to be the very model of noble comportment.
Likewise, this has certainly been an extraordinarily meaningful cup of tea.
I wholeheartedly concur. Before we part ways, I would like to offer you some of these leaves.
You simply must allow me to host you in turn, by way of recompense. We shall drink from House Gloucester's finest teacups and enjoy the loveliest of its cakes.
Oh,
That sounds exquisite. I look forward to
it's
it.
just so repulsive. It's actually really unique, because although the game does show hidden depths to Ferdinand, as players would expect, those narcissistic qualities and traits never really recede, even though he tries to progress with the best of intentions. And I credit the game for that. People can and should try to improve, but we're always going to have those character flaws that are embedded in us from birth. It's realistic and refreshing to see a game like this. It's memorable though, when he interacts with a character who is so far outside of his beliefs, like Linhardt, the lazy scholar who sleeps all day. Ferdinand cannot accept Linhardt's base character and finds it his duty to instruct and better his classmate using cheesy inspirational quotes about a rising and following paths of righteousness. This is so typical of characters in the same vein, giving advice that no one ever asked for. One highlight of his growth is found in his conversations with Bernadetta, who we'll examine shortly, and his unwillingness to accept that her own fears are very debilitating. Trying to force her to venture out only makes her back away even more, literally closing the door on him in her own room. But he does make amends, and Bernadetta feels better for it.
But you're right. I also need to venture out every once in a while. Maybe if I work as hard as you do, I can try it a little more.
His relentless obsession with self-improvement also makes an impact on the demure and gloomy Marianne, since through his persistence, she begins to realize that even despite her circumstances, even she may have a purpose that she can work towards. Furthermore, for Ferdinand to acknowledge Byleth's hero status while simultaneously correlating that with the fact that someone doesn't need to have achieved fame and fortune, much like the Pan and Lug tale he finds in the library, it shows that he can indeed leave his ego behind, even if it means never besting Edelgard.
Field. I am what I am. I will do what I am called to do, even if no mark of me remains in the history books.
I am what I am. That's powerful. These snippets are memorable, heartwarming, and help flesh Ferdinand out as a character. And of the two windbags in this series, I much prefer him over what's coming next.
Leave it all to me.
But at the end of the day, most people would probably respond to Ferdinand's self-serving selfishness with this line.
Is that so? You'll have to tell me about it sometime when I'm not walking away.
Where are you going?
Priceless. Despite the obvious discord among their demeanors, Linhardt is similar to Ferdinand in that he believes his own path is of such importance he can't find much of a reason to deviate from his own pursuits, his being intellectual. Researchers are definitely a unique bunch. I can relate to Linhardt myself, especially in the aspects of him always wanting to find out the tough answers to really tough questions, because that just leads you to another tough question that you want to solve even more. He goes to such extreme lengths in his pursuit of laziness and sleep. He'll even badmouth the future Empress nonchalantly.
To ensure that your talent is not wasted due to your lack of...
Have you assumed the role of my mother? You overplay the part. She was only half as overbearing.
Go to an actual monarch and try that line on them, and tell me how that works out for you. His actual motivation, though, when it's on, seems to transform his character into a fearsome, badgering lunatic. Witness him trying to pinpoint Flayn's major crest of St. Sethleen, which is, amusingly, so painfully obvious to the player and makes fun of his inability to catch on to her stammering excuses. It's remarkable how inclined he is to find her history, though. I mean, look at how casually he proposes marriage.
As a matter of fact.
Would, of course, require that you and I get married.
I beg your pardon?
Yes. If bearers of major and minor Sethleen crests reproduce, what crest would the offspring possess, if any? I must know, and thought the question might pique your interest as well.
It's all about the knowledge! Procreation for research clarity! Brilliant! Linhardt clearly does not understand the human condition. Imagine procreation being such a menial task, just a means to an end. This is also demonstrated in his longing to understand the hero's relics, like Catherine's legendary Thunderbrand sword. He wants to risk potential injury and death, just to maybe learn how the Creststone works. If something happens, it happens. Wow, it's both admirable and foolishly stupid. His disregard for physical safety also seems to seep into his emotional immaturity. But perhaps he has more of a working knowledge than I thought. Marianne is convinced that her crest befalls a curse onto anyone within her circle, and the fact that even Lindhart's vast evidence and research yields absolutely no proof of this theory actually does help make her feel better. As does Lysithea, when he proposes that she actually can potentially keep her crests and live a long life. The two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Even Lindhart realizes that nothing is certain and that chance exists. But my favorite skits with Lindhart revolve around his absolutely discombobulated relationship with Annette. She seems to make it her mission to change his lazy demeanor. It's the most polarizing attributes clashing, which obviously leads to humor and retorts back and forth. There's such a real chemistry between the two, and it's the cutest relationship arc in the entire game, despite how long it takes to really develop. But although it takes years, and even though when he's older, he's still found sleeping out in the middle of the woods during a huge war as if he hasn't learned a damn thing, Lindhart does plant the seeds of promise of future days, where he begrudgingly does get up every morning for the true love of his life. I would ship these two all day. All right, next up is, damn it. Who did I have on the script again? I think it was...
I am Caspar!
Oh. Ooh. Was anyone else annoyed by that? No? Well, maybe it was just me. Really, for the most part, the voice talent in Fire Emblem Three Houses is quite good. It's not Troy Baker level or anything, but the cast does a good job at matching each of the characters' appearances and personalities. But Caspar, not only did they hire someone with the most cliched of all cliched anime voices to match to him, his "fight, get stronger" one-liners combined with his predictable shorter stature make him one of my least favorite recruits in all honesty. Don't take my word for it, just listen to these.
I'm not finished with you. You're mine now. How about this?
I shouldn't make as big of a deal of it as I do, but a grating voice that you hear for 40 plus hours in all sorts of shapes or forms doesn't do much to endear you to him, especially when he makes all sorts of predictable blunders.
What do you think he's up to? Never mind that. Let's get him. Keep watch. It's so boring. My instincts tell me that he's up to no good, and my instincts are never wrong.
Why did you disobey your professor?
Well,
I am not seeking
Even Hubert detests his voice.
You yell before every move.
And I agree, on a battlefield it would be so unwise to be screeching before every attack.
It is very likely the enemy could anticipate your next move based on your insipid blather.
Can you imagine trying to do, like, a secret stealth mission where even a slight broken silence could mean the difference between life or death? And then you have this rookie soldier in your back ranks who just draws a sword and goes, "Die, die, die!" Even when the sexy preppy girl tries to entice him to use restraint in order to stay in battle shape to protect her, the very next scene leads to this.
There they go, starting another fight. I'm just gonna march over and... Wait, no. I have to restrain myself. I can't do it! Harry! You! Stop right there!
Or Or if a thief steals items and Caspar disagrees with Ash's justice approach, he decides that the best use of their time is to fight Ash, his friend, in order to see which of the plans they'll use, while the thief undoubtedly gets away. It's truly idiotic and just cringeworthy. I need to take a fair approach, though. And he does try hard to project as much of his own self-confidence onto his peers, who he feels doesn't have quite enough of their own. This is especially true with Annette, who can struggle with her own abilities despite her overachieving traits. He reminds her how everyone can need help sometimes, and that dwelling on simple mistakes is meaningless, which are important lessons for anyone to learn in any line of work. In some respects, this cliched, I can do anything anime personality can really pour in some positive energy, and the game shows this well. I just wish they could have, deepened his voice or something once he hits his early 20s, because it's truly a letdown compared to the other quality talent in the game. Honestly though, there's a surprisingly morose shame that he carries around due to his father's actions in previous battles. He feels it's a detriment to his relationships to Shamir and Petra that his father's conquests have literally wiped out some of their own families, and I can't imagine being in that position. I'm grateful the developers instilled some more mature and contemplative tones to enrich his character, because damn, that voice is grating. Dorothea has an intriguing backstory that's surprisingly dark, for a Nintendo game at least. She has so much misadventure with love, lust, and fame that stems back to her early years as a performer, and even further back when she had absolutely nothing. And this has jaded her expectations before she even gets to know some of the young male soldiers that populate Garrod Mach. A cherished conversation tree of hers is seen in the dissection of Ferdinand. She leaves this "be" quote with him to personify him early in their talks, which irks him to no end. And years later, she reveals the truth of this quote to devastating effect, as so many spiteful noble glares reminded her of a bee that was attracted to the most luscious and alluring flower. Despite her future rise to fame, her humblest of beginnings ensures that Dorothea looks deep into the personality of everyone, not judging based on wealth, age, or appearance. I find the connection between her and Byleth to be a real turning point for her, because she isn't able to flirt her way towards her predicted reactions.
Professor? What's with you? Why aren't you reacting to anything I'm doing?
And maybe this is what rejuvenates her hope for something better than what she's experienced before. Beyond this trope though, she enjoys building up friendships with characters who may struggle socially like Bernadetta, and she shows off more than just her well-known singing talents if you foster relationships throughout the party. Her matter-of-fact lecture about the benefits of devoting yourself to someone even manages to get Hubert to consider marriage after the war. She just gets life. And that's not uncommon among people who have had the toughest upbringings. I am a bit puzzled though by her stance with Hubert. It is shown with no evidence to the contrary that Dorothea has had many short-lived, likely shallow and unfulfilling encounters with young men around the monastery. She longs for a man who can show the devotion towards her that she knows she would provide to the right person. Despite Hubert's role as Edelgard's servant, which is what puzzles me, she looks past that and his often gruff demeanor to his devoted qualities, and subsequently proposes that a marriage between them would have so many benefits. It's not as romantic as she'd probably dreamed of, and it is abrupt, but Hubert's consideration makes me hopeful that perhaps the destiny between them is meant to be intertwined. I'd like to talk about Bernadetta next, so...
No! Into the light! Back to the beyond from whence you came!
No, I promise. It'll be gentle and...
Can't breathe! Too scared!
There's nothing to worry about. Look, I'll even lower my voice and look away from the...
Oh, I'm done for! You'll be the death of me for sure!
Okay, quickly, she's definitely one of the best...
Oh no, I'm on to you now. You're scheming, but you won't get anywhere by flattering me.
Okay, I'll be completely upfront about Bernadetta. She is easily my favorite character. She is so paranoid and avoidant. And when you find out her backstory of her basically being kidnapped and drug out to the monastery against her will, amongst other unsettling things, you root for her even more. When Byleth was forced to end her life in my first playthrough at the second battle of the Gronder Field, I had tears. And I bet many of you did too. She never wanted to be in the battlefield in the first place. With her shut-in lifestyle, completely introverted personality, self-loathing, and an unmistakable distaste for any kind of conflict.
Oh no. Anywhere I can hide.
I can't imagine how much anxiety and tension she would have felt on any of these missions. Having to evade attacks and shoot arrows at people who would sometimes get right up in her face, way too close for comfort, that would have been hell. Even when someone upbeat like Sylvain expresses genuine interest in her talented storytelling, she can only respond with self-rejection and fear. It's so sad. But if you give her a chance, you'll find Bernadetta slowly come out of her shell towards several of her classmates. She'll fix Leonie's torn cloth and become delighted at the prospect of having a friend.
We can help each other. Isn't that what friends do?
Friends? We're friends?
And even gets to the heart level with Dorothea, admitting to her how her negative parental influence caused her to avoid anyone of commoner birth, which no doubt made it even tougher for her to connect with anyone. Bernie can even find some potential love interests, most astonishingly, the cool, professional, and otherwise vicious swordsman Felix, who misinterprets her frantic reaction of fleeing as a secret disarming technique.
You're actually smiling. Not like a sarcastic
She'll get
smirk.
carried away by Caspar, who is absolutely oblivious to her distresses. Finding herself at a beautiful sunset, she'll impress the usually unemotional Linhart with her artwork, and in the most extreme example, get married to Byleth, despite thinking that this was going to happen.
What are we doing here? This is it. We're all alone. The perfect time.
You're going to kill me, aren't you?
In the epilogue, it states that she's drug around the world, eventually overcoming her hermit personality and reaching a conclusion and happy ending that would have seemed all but impossible during the first year of her stay at the monastery. Even her failures are adorable. Petra has this poetic, picturesque portrayal of how harvesting vegetables and hunting animals both require taking life, encouraging Bernadetta to give the animal an arrow and just turn it into a simple task of survival. She seems to buy into it, and Petra feels proud until the adorable bunny becomes the hunter of Bernie.
No! Stay back! I'm sorry, Mr. Rabbit, I didn't mean it!
The only time she isn't charming and likable is ironically when she actually tries to lighten the mood or make a joke.
Finishing these. Bernie's all burned out now. I guess if they're no good, we'll just have to burn them all, eh?
Let's leave the top.
You know what the craziest part is? All those examples we just looked at, it just made me realize Bernadetta actually interacts with a lot of the student population. In fact, she has the second highest amount of social links out of any character in Three Houses. I'm serious. She has 17 unique trees, including rare ones with characters like Yuritsa. Only Sylvain with 18 has a greater list of colleagues to build relationships with. And that is simply heartwarming. Personally, it's tough for me to connect with others right away, or make friends easily too, and I'm sure there are others watching this that can relate to Bernadetta's struggles on a personal level. What this game does best is give us hope that, yes, we may make a lot of personal blunders, and yeah, we may have to wait a lot longer than most other people do, but in due time, we will overcome our struggles, and we will find those meaningful relationships as well. I'm not sure if anyone can be as charming as Petra. She's the equivalent of a transfer student hailing from the continent of Brigid. And oh lord, help me Fire Emblem fans! Is this Brigid a big deal in other Fire Emblem games? And is Petra, mentioned in any of them? I would really be interested in finding out, because all these subtle hints and nods to other continents and other characters, it just whooshes right over my head. Petra is a unique combination. On one hand, she's always making missteps in the Foden language and interpretation.
You work with hardness. I I mean, you work hard.
Which can sometimes really put her in a much more intense situation than should have been warranted. She imagines Dorothea's plight of marrying money with a literal context. And speaking of money, there's a much more real situation in the money scandal with Ash.
Just so you know, there's no beating my prices. Cry. Beating. Are you wanting to battle me? Sword or bow? Which are you fighting with? You have skill with both, I'm thinking.
Petra!
And especially the joke interpretations of Alois, unintentionally thinking of him as a prolific comedian. But then you see the grace, confidence, and commitment she shows in battle, and her maturity in dealing with the inner army conflict with the likes of Caspar, with both of their parents having fought each other in a previous war. This breaches a topic that must have existed within real armies back in medieval times, with soldiers having to put aside family history to bind together for a greater cause. With all of the war her home continent has already been through, it's impressive to witness a young soldier nonetheless toss aside that family trauma when it comes to getting to know others in her ranks. Revenge and seething disdain you'd think would be intergenerational, but Petra says to hell with that. You're on my team, and that's it. She also deals with Hubert's comparison of her and Edelgard, confronting him and showing exemplary composure and confidence to not only convince him to be more attentive of her personal qualities apart from Edelgard, but also insinuating that Hubert will want to attach himself to her at the end of the war. Petra has a few moments like this, where she eschews any tentative banter and goes for the heart of the issue, and it's indicative of her role as a future queen of Brigid. It's an aura of respect that easily radiates. And how many royalty figures would say this to someone?
You have honesty too. You are a good person.
As a ruler, she realizes the value of words. The will that we have manifests in the words that we speak, so we should choose our words carefully and use them to benefit the world.
Hold on. Where are my clothes? I can't even find my... Where in blazes is my underwear?
Oh, Lord. Oh, this woman is very unique. Manuela has amazing talents. She's certainly respected as a premier professor of Garreg Mach. She holds workshops to help students better the skills in an oppressive array of subjects like reason, swordsmanship, and authority. Despite her diva past, she can be a real force on the battlefield too, and commits herself as much as any of the students or other professors. But behind the curtains of professional life, there lies a very demoralized, heartbroken woman in her late 30s who is desperately trying to hold on to her hopes and dreams of a loving relationship and avoid a future of loneliness. And when it feels like those fast fleeting aspirations are out of reach, things really start crashing around her.
My childhood memory of you is inscribed in the deepest depths of my heart. Is something the matter?
Oh, nothing. I just feel a little empty inside now.
She'll get caught with hangovers by students, or almost get exposed being improperly dressed. She'll go a bit too far with her flirtatious remarks among students in her own class, even using her teaching credentials to defend her actions of viewing deep personal poetry of her students, and then using that as leverage to engage with them in personal conversations. Lauren's, spoiler alert, is my least favorite character, but even he didn't deserve this breach of privacy. And her social behavior really doesn't improve even after the time skip, which would put her past 40 by then, while the others are in their early to mid-20s. Not that she seems to care. But even amidst these trials, we see her find glimpses of sincerity. Seteth finds her silently praying, learning about the moment she heard a beautiful singing voice that guided Manuela to a life of stardom on stage. And as Seteth says, she's much different when in this solemn state. There's some more lighthearted moments too, like when she has to hear out Alois's ramblings about being a father and what to get his young daughter as a gift, only complying when he compliments her.
I thought that a young woman such as yourself might be able to help.
Young? Did you just call me? Could you repeat that, please?
Her vanity is always on, but this shallowness does have an adorable quality when it's in an innocent way such as this. She reminisces about her glorious singing performances with Flayn, which has some fantastic life quotes ingrained in it, like this one.
You always have to remind yourself that if a place shines brighter than anywhere else, its shadows will be darker too.
It's a similar motif to Kingdom Hearts. The closer to light something gets, the bigger the shadow will be. You can take this in many ways, but for me personally, it reminds me that despite social media only showing careful brushstrokes and collages of the best and brightest moments of people's lives, just remember that there is darkness, shadows, and tribulations among even those people, sometimes even more than we think. And if you live a quieter life like I do, sometimes the peace and freedom that brings can be liberating. But for other people, being in the spotlight, being that center of attention, is what they need. So maybe it's best that we just don't judge people based on their own personal preferences. Hanneman has many intriguing and quirky qualities. The scholar in him is so overpowering, it often mitigates his efforts to try and bond more naturally to others in an affable way. Even when striking a chord through mutual interests, like organizing the book racks with Lysithea and asking her how she's doing, he blunders this instantly by correlating her good health with the activity of her crests. As Lysithea herself says,
"You just can't see beyond the crest, can you?"
However, there's definitely a human soul that reveals itself from time to time. After the incident with Lysithea, he expresses extreme guilt upon learning of how awful the crests can be.
You still claim that my crests are something positive?
I cannot. Please understand. I had no idea.
He apologizes, offers to cooperate in a more mutual manner with the mage towards the end of finding a restoration of life among twin crest users. Hanneman also has more conviction and steadfastness than one would expect from the scholarly type. Despite having a confrontation with Hubert, who even as a young man is very seething and intimidating, he says flat out that he has crucial information he needs to share regarding Hubert's father, despite Hubert's objections. And after sharing this, and even seeing Hubert unconvinced that his father was in actuality an honorable man, he acknowledges that truth is in the eye of the beholder, and wishes Hubert well, supporting him nonetheless. And there are positive influences made stemming from his ambitiousness, sharing a thirst of crest knowledge with Linhardt, and despite Linhardt's initial reactions to hearing about his goals, he eventually succeeds in convincing him that actual progress and work can make for a larger, positive impact on the world. Not many others would be able to sway Linhardt's apathetic approach to this degree. Hanneman is not beyond reproach, though. He uses the suspicions he has about how Seteth and Flayn have managed to keep so much secret as a means to finally convince Seteth to allow his research to commence on his crest. Blackmailing isn't the worst sin in the world as far as he's concerned.
Using her? What do you... Oh, that is low.
You promised me just now. Investigate me all you wish, you said. I will even cooperate, you said. Do you deny it?
Finally, we can't leave Manuela and Hanneman's threads without acknowledging their old married couple tendencies over the course of the plot.
Absolutely insufferable.
There's a lot of fun to be had here, especially when, even after both admitting their faults, they can't last 10 seconds before having at it again.
I was only trying to give you a useful bit of advice.
And that so-called advice is exactly why I call you meddlesome and overbearing.
There it is. Manuela begins to protest even when she knows...
I find that the ending where they end up together the most canon for me, because that's a relationship that would never lack entertainment. Well, that's an insight into the Black Eagles. Have any of the profiles convinced you to like a certain character more than you might have before? Or did they simply reconfirm your seething hatred for a specific character? Regardless, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because having different opinions just helps put these characters together in an even more complete way. And hey, if you like this and enjoyed the content, please consider liking and subscribing, and join us next Friday as we put the magnifying glass lens on the Blue Lion House. Have a great weekend, gamers, and I will see you next Friday.